Welcome in to the Guerilla Sports Off Ice post-game live. And this live is brought to you by our good friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American Mortgage salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payment. Go to trustedamerican.com to see how much money they can save you today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Welcome in, Avalanche, Utah post-game show here, Guerilla Sports Off Ice. Avs take care of business, Megan, 4-1. Final might be a little bit misleading. This was a close one right down to the bitter end. 3 points for Nathan McKinnon, Artturi Lehkonen hat trick, and Mackenzie Blackwood was outstanding. Megan, if you guys have been with us all night, we've been talking about this game. Mackenzie Blackwood, that theme did not change all night. Nathan McKinnon, 3 points. I feel like matches the effort that we saw. Great to see Artturi Lehkonen get things rolling. Megan, just your overall thoughts, what we just saw in Utah.
I had some nerves around the midway point in the final period just because shots were heavily tilted in Utah's favor. Colorado getting hemmed in their own end a little bit. Again, it was something like 10-2 with around the midway point. And it finishes still 70-2 in that final frame, 17-12 in that final frame, with Utah leading that shots battle. And so I had some nerves. Mackenzie Blackwood did have to come up with some huge saves, but he did. I think to him gloving Lawson Krause snapshot around the 12:56 mark. And I was worried that it wouldn't really end up a statement game. You know, there was still a chance for the Avs to win it, but it probably wouldn't be in a very impressive fashion, and it would make for a pretty easy and quick post-game show. But I like that the ESPN broadcast team did bring it to everyone's attention that Colorado looked like a team with no quit, that they didn't really appear to be any more fatigued in the third period than they were at any point in the game. And I think that really challenged Utah and kind of broke them down a little bit. And that's where I think the top guys were able to come in that final frame and take control of the game and win it now in a more impressive fashion. And unfortunately, but in a cool way, give us the opportunity to give Mackenzie Blackwood his flowers in this game, because they didn't do themselves many favors to start the period, taking a penalty. I specifically asked them not to, but Mackenzie Blackwood comes up huge, and I'm really happy. You know, the stat we just saw about their road record, 13-7?
Yep, 13-7.
It's been impressive, and for them to come out of the break with that kind of strength where they've previously struggled is really an impressive result.
Well, and to be able to battle through, like what you said, of they didn't do themselves a ton of favors in the third period. They didn't look on top of their game for a full 60, but for them to be able to come out after the break, battle through, and get the result, which is what matters at the end of the day, you've got to be very impressed with that, what we saw from the Avalanche here tonight in Utah. I want to talk a little bit about this third period before we take a little bit of a broader step back. You and I went into that third period in the second intermission report, said, get out of your own way. Don't take any penalties. Be more disciplined. Help out your goaltender. And for about the first 10 minutes, they did not do a lot of any of that. They did take penalties. You were already without Nathan McKinnon for the first 5 minutes. Then Mikko Rantanen takes a stick infraction. Give Utah credit. Beautiful tip right in front. They get things tied. They really seem to feed on that, build some energy. The building was into it. The Avs didn't make it easy on themselves. And like I said, you give them a lot of credit for digging deep, finding a way to come out of that with a win. But again, Mackenzie Blackwood didn't get the shutout. And we said as much was possible there in that second intermission that, look, he doesn't have to complete the shutout here the rest of the way for this to be a statement game for him. I thought it was. Finishes the night with a 971 on the day that he signs a 5-year extension. I actually almost feel like this was more impressive than the shutout, the potential shutout, because he gives up a goal and he bounces back and he says, I gave one up. We're in a tie game late. No more. No more. And he shut the door the rest of the way.
Yeah, on a kill, no less, where you maybe grant a goaltender some more allowances, and it was a kill that he came up with saves for 2 other times, through 3 opportunities for Utah there. So there's nothing for him to hang his head over. And the expected goals against finishes 3.48. He only lets in that one on the kill. And it is a really a tip in right at the net front.
Great screen plus a great tip.
Also made a little too easy for Schmaltz to be planted there at the crease, pretty uncontested by Manson. I'm not looking at Mackenzie Blackwood too critically there. And then I key in on the Clayton Keller backhand attempt kind of late in this game, shortly after the Lehkonen goal happens, where there's a little life injected back into this team. That can absolutely change the momentum of the final minutes in that game and give Utah just enough room to climb back into it. And so denying an elite player like Clayton Keller in that moment is huge from Mackenzie Blackwood. And so I think those saves you can key in on as being a huge part of the storyline in this game.
Well, and that stop on Clayton Keller, like it's a little mini breakaway at best, in terms of how much room he had clear the defenders. Forehand, backhand, and Mackenzie Blackwood gets the initial stop. But if you watch that puck from the ice level angle in tight on the net, that puck keeps moving. Mackenzie Blackwood seals the pads together, and then you see that puck kind of come back out, and he's able to get a cover on it. That's one where if you are not a technically sound goalie and on your push, if you're not coming back through and sealing everything up after that push, there's pucks that are going to beat you. And I'm not doing this to be mean. This literally just popped into my head. I swear to God, I'm not trying to do this to score easy points. Alexander Georgiev is playing in net for the San Jose Sharks tonight. And one of the goals he gave up, I didn't fault him for it in the replay I was watching, but he did something that I remember seeing Alexander Georgiev do a lot here. And in those types of moments, when he's getting beat wide, you'd see Georgiev kind of go to this, like flaring his legs out, trying to make himself as wide as possible. And in a lot of instances, that would lead to him getting 85% of the puck, and then it's still trickling through. And that's what happened tonight in San Jose, playing against the Vegas Golden Knights. I believe that game's still going on. And there's just little differences there. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the wingspan of Mackenzie Blackwood's butterfly. He doesn't need to go full splits to try to get from one side to the other and leave that vulnerability kind of in behind him. He can make a strong push, make the initial stop, close things back up, technically sound, and you're good. And you never know that puck was trickling through because he's calm, collected, in control, gets that puck stopped, even though it's moving around a little bit, gets the whistle, moves on. Just small little differences. Again, we don't need to talk about Alexander Georgiev. Just, I noticed it tonight, and you brought up that save on Keller. Again, it's the little differences in net that are making the huge impact for the Avs. Right now, what are the thoughts you have on Mackenzie Blackwood doing what he was able to do here tonight?
I think the timing's perfect. It would have been cool if it had been a shutout, but to your point, I think being able to see him respond to letting in a goal in the third period, I think is incredibly important for him. He doesn't let it melt down. It happens relatively early.
Yep.
On a penalty that was probably avoidable, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't let it bother him. He doesn't look bothered by it at all.
Energy goes up in the building, and he just kind of gets right back into his zone. Yeah. Corey
Massasak reports it's one of the loudest buildings they've been in a while. So the crowd really gets into it following the Nick Schmaltz power play goal, and Mackenzie Blackwood doesn't let that get in his head.
When we were actually told when I was out in Utah earlier this season that the Utah Jazz apparently are known for having one of the most loud, raucous, on top of you buildings, and it's because of the way the arena is built. It's kind of like the Bell Center in Montreal, where the seats go straight up, so the crowd's right on top of you. Hockey, the sight lines aren't great. Evan Rowell, who was there tonight, was reporting that, when we were there earlier in the season, a lot of the obstructed view seats went empty for Avs Utah earlier this year. But that first game after the Christmas break, there's always a lot of people who get tickets as gifts and stuff like that and go to games. So it sounds like it was a pretty packed building. Don't doubt for one second that it was jumping in there pretty good tonight. Let's shift gears here and talk about Nathan McKinnon and what he was able to do tonight. 3 assists, a fight. Doesn't get the Gordie Howe hat trick, but that is what you want to see out of a leader who is the emotional leader, the emotional engine of your team. I feel like Nathan McKinnon made sure his group was going tonight.
It's not to be understated because it's not just he makes the right passes on both of the goals, the not empty net goals.
Yeah.
Which is also incredibly important, by the way. But it is the other side of it, being involved and standing up for himself at the end of the second period and continuing then in the third period to lead the top guys. I think it isn't a coincidence that the difference makers, at least on the score sheet, are consistent of the top six, and particularly the top line is really going tonight. And I think you look to Nathan McKinnon as being the one to lead in that sense.
I also just really love, I don't want to say effort. This looks like a different team than it did 2 weeks ago, Megan. The belief, the confidence, the compete, maybe that's the word that I'm looking for. I just really like the compete level from this team right now. And you mentioned off the top how the ESPN broadcast was mentioning no quit in their game. They just kept coming back anytime, even if the Avs would have a couple bad shifts, Utah would have them in their zone. They just found a way to push back and get back on the offensive and never, gave anything easy to Utah. And I feel like early in the season, yes, the goaltending was the bulk of the issue. And analytics would say that, the eye test would say that, but it did feel like at times the Avs lost some of that compete. I feel like it's back, and it's just making such a massive difference. 4 in a row, 8 of their last 10. This team feels like it's believing in itself again.
I agree with that. I know it feels easy to say because the wins have also kind of been alongside what appears to be an observable difference in confidence, but I think it all works together. I go back to how this team has sometimes looked coming out of the break, and so I think that's a significant detail in this story, that it wasn't as weird of a hockey game. And going back to the comments on the broadcast, the comebacks we've seen them launch in third periods have been out of desperation and necessity. This game was never so far beyond their reach. And so I like that they still played with that same urgency that we've seen in other comebacks that they've been forced to launch in third periods. I like that they had that same hunger. It was just a lot less necessary because they didn't put themselves in quite as bad a position. And I even think to some of the physicality, it wasn't like a huge story in this game, but Ross Colton, big hit on Stenley in the first period. Josh Manson, there's a giveaway. Logan Cooley goes in on a rush attempt, and Manson's the guy back and prevents anything of risk from happening there just by laying a big hit on Cooley along the wall. And I think it's important to kind of shout out to this team leads and hits coming out of this game. It's another part of this story is they're not just doing the elite playmaking things that the top guys in Colorado are expected to do. It was a hard-fought game from lines 1 through 4. Everybody on the back end, Josh Manson in his first game back, there's obvious rust there.
Yeah.
But there wasn't an engagement issue at any point tonight. They made some mistakes. They maybe took some penalties you'd want to have back. But I don't think the effort was ever an issue, and that's really significant.
Artturi Lehkonen gets the hat trick, first hat trick of his career. And I'm sorry, it just updated, so I don't have it pulled yet. Maybe we'll talk about it here over the weekend at some point. I'm looking at this heat map, Megan, and my favorite thing about it, you and I have talked about in the past, that this team, when they get into a rut or when they start to struggle, the offense isn't there, that when they simplify the game, get back to getting in front of the net, smarter passes, shooting from everywhere. I'm not saying that has to be their all-time formula. This team is speed and pace and snapping the puck around, things like that. But when they are struggling and they can get back to those basics, the results usually come along with that. Tonight, Karel Vejmelka was playing outstanding. For as much as we've talked about Mackenzie Blackwood, Karel Vejmelka as well. Really good night tonight for him. How did the Avs break through? Twice. Artturi Lehkonen going to the front of the net and winning puck battles, finding loose pucks, and just punching them home. Artturi Lehkonen tonight showed why he is such a valuable asset to this team. Once again, in addition to the stuff that he does away from the puck, 200-foot game, he is a guy that just seems like a pain in the ass to play against. And he's always parked right in front of the net, gets rewarded with 2 with a goalie in, then finds the empty net as well.
I think in looking back at our recent period of the last 10-game stretch, Artturi Lehkonen has been doing great things, especially since he missed pretty decent time at the start of this year. And so it's not surprising, but it had felt like it had grown a little quiet. And in talking about how Bednar is clearly looking for something in the top six, it's great to see the top line in this current iteration get going. Now, the combination of Lehkonen, McKinnon, Nichushkin, it really worked tonight. And Artturi Lehkonen was a huge part of that because he's been on the doorstep of broken plays and just maybe hasn't had the best shot selection in that moment. And so it's great to see him, who's been doing all of the right things process-wise, get rewarded, especially because Karel Vejmelka did play great tonight. So it's not just by happenstance. They really had to fight for every goal. Because to your point, Colorado didn't give very much easily. Utah especially didn't. There were 20 additional attempts at the end of this game blocked by Utah before anything even sees Vejmelka, but the expected goals against Vejmelka still ends 3.59. And so that points to quality creation on Colorado's behalf, and a lot of it is the top line.
Despite the ups and downs, the Avs were able to kind of analytically control the bulk of this game. But again, I just keep hitting back to they had to grind this one out. Utah, for as much as the Avs didn't go away, Utah never went away. They built on the momentum in the third period, and the Avs just had to keep finding a way to gut this game out. And I think that's the part that just keeps standing out to me. I want to go back to someone we talked about in the first intermission here, Devon Taves. Cale Makar ends up edging him out by 5 seconds to lead the game in ice time, but Devon Taves, 25 minutes, 12 seconds. You and I both commented after the first that we thought it was maybe one of his best first periods that we had seen in a while, or one of his best periods that we had seen in a while. He looked engaged. He looked fast. You called out the back checking play where he comes back, makes a beautiful stick check to break up. Who was that on the breakaway? Doesn't matter. But finds a way to get back. It was Krause. It was Lawson Krause. Finds a way to get back, break that up. Doesn't take a penalty. He's a guy that we have talked about being someone who's not necessarily struggling, but has not played maybe up to the expectation this year. Thought that he could benefit from some time off. What did you think of Devon Taves for the last two periods?
I thought he was great. And I mean, even in the first period, I think his hole on the night was fabulous. There were mistakes, but he corrected any mistakes that he made and then played good hockey on top of it. And I liked him being reunited with Cale Makar on the top pair, and it felt righteous. It was a good decision to have him back there. He did the right things to earn those minutes alongside Makar and did so much to be trusted in that way. And so I thought it was a great night from Taves, and we've been a little tough on him lately, but great in both ends, and I really liked what we saw.
Avs only give up 5 high danger chances at even strength tonight in this game. Yes, you can point a lot to the goaltending doing its thing and coming up big for the Avs in a lot of instances over the last couple of weeks. But I do feel like that would be us selling the defensive play in front of these netminders just a little bit short, both on the penalty kill and at even strength. It does feel like it got a little bit scrambly at times tonight, but it feels like on the whole, we are just seeing a much better defensive effort from this group. Seems like the communication is better. Seems like the rotations are better. They're getting pucks up and out, and it happened a couple times tonight where Utah maybe pushed the pace a little bit, but it doesn't feel like they are allowing teams to establish the zone and just hem them in and pepper shots for 2 minutes at a time, the way that we saw several points in the early part of the season. Do you feel the same way, or did it feel like maybe it got a little bit too scrambly, a little bit too hemmed in your zone at points tonight?
I still think a little too hemmed in their zone at points, but on the whole, the defensive effort is worth talking about and getting some praise just because the shots end 35-37, in favor of Colorado. And so this is still a pretty high volume shot that they were receiving. And you look at the heat map similarly, and there's a decent amount of opportunities created inside home plate that they didn't capitalize on, save for one on their power play opportunity, which points to a team that was at least getting pucks out from the net front, even if they allowed the initial attempt. I think Mackenzie Blackwood in allowing fewer rebounds, but also the defenseman cleaning up and clearing pucks from the net front became huge to disallow rebound opportunities to create the second attempts, which would have been even more dangerous. And I think that is good defense. You obviously don't like to see them generating chances inside home plate at all.
Right.
But I think given the circumstances, that is something they can build upon and lock down even more. And obviously Utah gets a power play goal, but they have 2 significant kills in addition to that. And I think that's also important for a kill that has been so good in the month of December, that it continues to be decent. They allow a power play goal. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. The power play goal, as we talk about times, and we hear Jared Bednar talk about it, there's 2 teams out there that have a say in the outcome of this game. You got to give some credit to Utah as well on that power play. Thought it was a well-executed power play. To your point, don't love that Schmaltz is there all alone in front of the net. But the Avs are making some decisions there. There's good players. Logan Cooley, Clayton Keller. There are some good players on that Utah power play. Got to make some decisions and, give Utah credit on that one. We are going to start winding things down here. Get your questions into the chat. Have you had any come through on the did you put something out on X?
I did. There are a couple here.
There's a couple there. All right. Any last thoughts before we get into the questions? Any last thoughts for you on what we saw in Utah tonight?
Big win.
Big win.
They're doing the right things in the standings, and I like to see them continue to string together wins, even coming out of the break.
Well, and tonight, and it just seems like this is always how it goes. Minnesota and Dallas play. Dallas gets up 2-0. The game, of course, ends up going to overtime before Minnesota gets the win. But look, if you're the Avs and you know that teams around you have games in hand on you, like Dallas does, like Utah does, well, you got to make sure that you're winning all the games you can. You're collecting as many points as you can, especially on nights where a team like Dallas doesn't get a win. The Avs, yes, Dallas has 3 games in hand. The Avs sit now 3 points ahead of the Stars, 3rd in the Central Division. Again, we're not getting overly obsessed with watching the standings quite yet, but it is something that we are approaching the halfway point. You've got to keep an eye on. To your point, big win here tonight on a night where Dallas lost. So you needed to help. You needed to help yourself make up some of that ground. What's a question you got here?
Adrian asked if there has been a pre-Christmas and post-Christmas break bookend Hattie before, let alone 2 Finnish players.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Have that
we have to reach out to Brendan on that one, but it felt like the Avs went through a long stretch in history there where they didn't get many hat tricks at all, and now between Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon, feels like we're getting them like once a month. So I'm not sure. But I don't know. That seems relatively unlikely.
Right. I don't have that answer to that stat either, but it's a great question because this does feel like a pretty unique circumstance.
For sure. I got one in the chat here. Sorry, I arrived late. Not sure if you covered this. Thoughts on Manson's performance?
That's actually one of the questions I got on Twitter as well.
Let's also give credit to who it was on Twitter who asked.
I believe it was Katie Bartlett. She has asked questions very regularly for us. So thank you, Katie.
Yep. Exceeded my expectations, given the amount of time he missed, the rust, given that the team couldn't really get together and skate these last few days. And based on what I saw last out of Josh Manson and the battles that he was still fighting with the injury, thought he looked really good tonight.
He wasn't without mistakes. He led the team in giveaways with 3, but kind of similar to a Taves who also had a couple of mistakes that you could pick up on. He didn't let them become too costly. Obviously would have liked him to be a little stronger on the kill in defending the net front from Schmaltz. But that's really my only criticism because he found other ways to be effective in this game, whether it was through his physicality and dishing hits or trying to register some shots on net. Mm-hmm. I like that in his game back, he wanted to make sure that he was visible. And so he did leave his fingerprints on this game. He didn't hurt the team and he played significant minutes, though, having missed a decent amount of time. So I think it's only natural that he needs to shake off a little bit of rust. But I thought I was pretty happy with what he did, especially wasn't sure if he's going to be eased into it and maybe a little bit more sheltered, mixing in shifts with the third pair more so, but he kind of came in hot and seemed fine.
Yeah. What do you got next?
All right. I think McKinnon's fight changed the game completely against the Avs. After his unnecessary fight, Utah surged for 15 minutes. He is too good and valuable to be fighting in a 1-goal game against a division rival. Hope he learns his lesson. Honestly, when I started reading that is not what I thought the direction of the comment was going to go.
Me either.
So I guess your thoughts on Nathan McKinnon and the fight and the impact to the team.
I don't know if I agree, and I mean, I'd have to go back and rewatch. I don't know if I agree with the fact that Utah took over for the first 15 minutes of the third period. I don't know. I said it during the intermission. I like the fight from Nathan McKinnon personally. I like that it shows he's not afraid to stand up for himself. He's not a superstar that is going to allow himself to get bullied. He doesn't need someone else to come in and step in for him. And I thought both teams kind of raised the intensity level. I also feel like it was natural for Utah to be maybe the team that pushed a little bit harder coming into the third. They were the ones down by a goal. They were the ones needing to get things tied. And then they were the ones who very early went on the power play, were able to score a goal, feed off the energy. I just feel like more than the fight went into what led to Utah's surge in the first half of the third period there. But again, I do like the overall message. I agree with what's coming through in the chat right now. You don't want Nathan McKinnon doing that every night. You don't want him risking the injury, putting himself in the box for 5 minutes. But I actually think that it is a good thing to see a leader like that on your team do that every once in a while to just show I'm in this fight as much as anybody. No pun intended. I'm in this fight as much as anybody, and no one's going to push me or anyone else on this team around. I think that's a good message from a leader.
I do too. I think it's situational, and if it became a habit, would absolutely have concern around it. And I think the opportunity made a lot of sense. He was being unnecessarily baited and bullied by Hayton, and just responded. Going back to the Josh Manson thing for a second too, because I was looking this up while we were talking about him. He actually finished with the second fewest scoring chances against at even strength, with Sam Malinski with a team high in allowing the least amount of scoring chances against. So it was a really good night defensively from Sam Malinski. And I think back to a moment in the first period specifically where he blocked a shot lane perfectly and denied an opportunity. I forget who it was, but it was somebody that absolutely posed a threat. And I think that set a tone pretty early. Pretty good night. Obviously,
that 2-on-1 that he broke up, you're saying? Yes, yeah, early in the game.
So good game defensively from Malinski, and after no points in the month of December, finally gets on the score sheet, plays a role in the first goal for the Avs. And I think that's a significant night from Malinski that I just kind of wanted to use Manson not having a terrible night defensively to also compliment Malinski.
There was a comment that came to the chat that said they felt like that was maybe Malinski's best 200-foot game of the year. I liked what I saw all over the lineup tonight.
Yeah, there was a lot to really like.
I agree with you. Now, we talked about Giovanni Smith at the first intermission, saying we want to see more from him. We want to see him contribute in a bigger way. I don't think took a shift in the third period, him and Uriinola. Other than those two, who, again, I don't think were bad. They just maybe weren't having the impact that Jared Bednar was looking for. And in a one-goal game, Jared Bednar has shown time and time and time and time again that if he is in a tight game and he doesn't trust you to be out there, he's not going to play you. So outside of those two players, who, again, I'm going to definitely stop short of saying they were bad.
Right.
I really liked what I saw all over the lineup tonight.
It stinks. Both take a penalty. And honestly, the Anala penalty was weird. So I really feel a little bad for him. But you're right. He shores up the bench when it's super close and really leans on his top guys heavily. So they finish with big minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy task for them, but they seemed hungry for it.
Yeah.
You get the sense that Nathan McKinnon wanted to be out there as much as possible in that third period. And it's a good thing he was. He was a huge difference maker.
Any last questions on that from Twitter? Because I do want to touch on one last Avs-related but non-Avs-related thing to end the show.
No more questions.
Cal Ritchie, Team Canada, loses in a shootout to Latvia. Third win ever for Latvia at the World Juniors. Canada beat Latvia 10-0 last year. Cal Ritchie gets a beautiful goal, and I actually tweeted out, I really like the play. Wins a board battle, cycles it around, then looks like Nathan McKinnon out there letting go of a one-timer from the circle, but Canada falls short. Did you just have any thoughts on Cal Ritchie, or what's maybe the biggest upset of like the last century at the WJCs.
I don't have a lot of thoughts about Calgary because I don't think that he lost the game for Team
Correct.
Canada.
Yeah.
And I think that Latvia deserved a little respect. You were pointing back to last year's World Juniors, and I do think that this is a team that's been building towards being more competitive. So this feels like the result of that.
Yep.
And because of the nature of the tournament too, it can, like I remember USA being eliminated a lot sooner than I thought the year before last. And it was a little bit disappointing, but I think that's just the nature of the tournament. And I'm just excited to see names that I'm not as familiar with then get a little bit of time in the sun. I don't think it speaks poorly of, or like reflects poorly of Cal Ritchie his potential. And so I'm not putting much stock in that, but it is kind of fun to see an upset. Like nothing against Team Canada either. I think it is interesting too. There were already some maybe questions or criticisms of how they built their roster, and it's just interesting. It's fun to watch.
And I definitely didn't mean like, oh, what'd you think of Cal Ritchie losing that game? But just there was a lot that I really liked about the little bit that I was able to see of that game while we had Avs going on and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely pretty crazy. I think that's going to do it for us here tonight, guys. Artturi Lehkonen hat trick, Nathan McKinnon 3-point night. You got several point streaks going. Val Nichushkin, Mikko Rantanen now up over 10 games. Nathan McKinnon 10 games, 18 points in those last 10 games, and a 971 from Mackenzie Blackwood tonight to continue to add to what has been an impressive start here in Colorado that led to a 5-year contract extension today. We talked at length about his contract extension and Avs goaltending as a philosophy, how they are looking right now, what the plan might be for the future. And we also dive in a little bit to the comments that we got in, that we heard from Ivan Prosvetov in an interview criticizing the Avs and their goaltending coach and the way that the organization treats goaltenders. We got into all of that earlier today on Guerilla Sports Off Ice. That is available for you audio only or right here on our YouTube channel. I think you could also go back and find it on X as well, but I highly encourage you to go listen to that one. A lot of moving parts in net, Megan. A lot of moving parts for the Avs. That's going to do it. Any final thoughts? No final thoughts. She's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. Mark behind the glass all night long, making sure that all of this happens and we're not just in here talking to ourselves. So big shout out to Mark as always. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back at it on Monday with a pod. Nothing for the Avs this weekend, but we will be at practice tomorrow morning. So expect to see some news, sound bites, sights, and sounds from Family Sports Center, the Avs practice facility. Thank you all so much. Have a great night. Have a great, safe holiday weekend. Is it still a holiday weekend?
Yeah.
It's a holiday weekend. Have a good one, folks. Thanks so much.